All right. Welcome, everybody. This is episode 28 of Storycomic Presents, and I am so happy to have here with us, we are talking to Kris McPeak. Kris McPeak, author, podcaster, and career coach, is here with us straight from California, coast to coast. You're talking from the East Coast to the West Coast. So everybody's hearing us from Mountain Time and Central Time. Our voices are going back and forth.
That is how we roll, always.
Yeah. So thank you, Kris. It's so great to see you. It's so great to talk with you. And congratulations on your new book that just came out. And I do see that it's on Amazon. It's a number one in new releases and blogging as a book goes. So you're right up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a pretty special day.
Yeah.
August 4th, launching that bad boy.
See, not bad at all.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you have a few books out, and all of them are very successful. So for probably the one or two people that are out there that haven't heard about your books yet, or haven't heard about you, do you want to give kind of people a quick background and a history of how you got to where you are today and being a successful podcaster and author?
Sure. Well, my background, my day job is in higher education. I worked for a very long time in campus housing. So if that doesn't ring a bell to anybody, if I say dorm, that should help. Although I always coached my students to not use that word. And I got out of that racket about 7 years ago. I work in advancement now at a community college, but along the way, I became very passionate about time management and work-life balance, because when you live on campus, you essentially live where you work, and that can be highly stressful. And the division of, between work and home can be really hard. So in my very last housing job, I started a second master's program in recreation management that I did not finish, but I took a course on adult leisure. And it was just sort of a study of how people engage in leisure and sort of the difference between people who take vacation days, don't take vacation days. And I just sort of got really obsessed with this. And I thought, one of these days I need to write a book about that. So when I left that job and moved back down to SoCal to do what I'm currently doing, I decided this is the year I'm going to go ahead and write this book. So that book turned into Making Work for You, which is a little primer on the concept of work-life balance. And I really enjoyed the author process. So I went to write a second book, and the second book is also the namesake of my podcast. So it's called Elevate Your 8. And Elevating Your 8 is basically my theory, philosophy on time management and productivity. The idea is that if you are honoring your work-life balance, you work only 8 hours a day, and you honor your wellness and you get 8 hours of sleep every night, then the real key to productivity is that remaining 8. And if you elevate those 8, then you're putting yourself in a position to be highly productive, make the most use of your time. It's all about, math and prioritization, basically. And as I was preparing to write that book, I attended a mastermind group with a handful of other women who were in the wellness entrepreneur realm. And when I started saying, elevate your 8, this is this idea that I have, I'm writing this book. And they were like, oh my God, you have to start a podcast. And so I did. And 2 years, I'm 82 episodes into the Elevate Your 8 podcast. So inching up on that episode 100. And this, 2020 has not been the average year on any scale of anyone's imagination. I had a guest recently who said this is the year of the 3 Ps. So politics, pandemic, and I forget what the other one was. But there's so many things that are kind of loading their way into 2020. And so I joined a 14-week book group with other people that were getting ready to write their first book and try to, hit bestseller. And that's where the 9-to-5 side hustler came from. I'm very fond of my day job. I love working in higher education. I really don't have any desire to leave it. If one of my books made $1 million one of these days, that'd be great. But I still don't think I would quit my job because I really like what I do. But that for me, it was like, okay, I'm going to write about for people that have a side hustle, have a small business, but still dig their day job and kind of want to hang with that. So that's where this book came from. And now I'm here hanging out with you on Storycomic.
But let me ask you a question, though, that a lot of these things, do you see, is this mostly a uniquely American challenge? Because we know we always hear stories, anecdotes of other countries are very good at taking vacation, or very good at minimizing that and making sure they have personal time. Do you see, kind of like your target audience for a lot of these coaching books are kind of geared towards more of an American cultural audience?
That's a really good question. And I mean, I think you're spot on. I do think that, the whole concept, I think, of United States, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, Horatio Alger, like live the dream, go west, young man, all this stuff. We've sort of taught ourselves over the many, many years that we have to work harder than everybody else, that we have to prove our existence. I mean, we had to do that for a while, and we even went to war for it to, come up with this way of life where everybody can be free, and and freedom has a price. And now I'm getting political. Thanks a lot, Barney. This is great. But I think no. I mean, I think that there's so much. It's very loaded to think about this notion of we have to be stronger, smarter, faster, more clever, and people in the States just tend to really throw themselves completely balls to the wall into their work. And I did that for a little while, but it's not sustainable. We're not giving our best self to our work when we're working 60 and 80 and however many hours a week. We're not giving our best self to our work when we can't remove our faces from our computer screens or our cell phones, when we're checking email while we're laying in bed watching, the season finale of Scandal or whatever. That's a bad example because that show's over now, but you know what I mean? So there's not enough people stepping up and saying, take your vacation days, and you don't have to, I don't have money to travel, I can't go on vacation. Well, then just take your damn days and have a staycation at home. Spend the whole weekend at the movie theater when you can go to the movie theater again. Those types of things. So yeah, to answer your question in a shorter way, I do think it is something uniquely American, and it's not necessarily something that I think that we do well. We don't take very good care of ourselves.
Well, and also too, the very fact that people have so much easy access to work now with like their work emails on their phone. So they're never actually mentally unplugging from, even though they might be out of their office or out of work, they still might still be able to ding. There's something about that ding on the phone. We're like, oh, an email to check it. So they're never actually mentally. Do you talk about that at all? About how physically you are separate, but also you have to be mentally separate all in any of your coaching?
Yeah. Well, in the first book, especially, there's a whole segment in there on, choosing when to unplug, and that it has to be a very conscious effort. Like, take all your notifications off. So you don't need to know the minute that somebody sends you an email or the minute you get tagged on Facebook. Turn all that stuff off. When you're at the office and you're actually working, throw your phone in a drawer. Don't, keep it out of sight. And don't do what Kris McPeak is doing right now, and that's to have 12 windows open on your laptop. And guilty. That's one of my tragic areas. It's like, oh, I just need to make sure that I can see this one thing all the time. But so, yeah, I mean, I think that when we get so connected to the devices and what the devices are capable of doing, we lose a lot of that, human touch. And right now, I suppose it's a good thing that we're able to connect the way that we are, because we can't be physically with people, at least not in California. And there's some hope in that at least, this way I can see my colleagues when we have a daily check-in. But I mean, there has to be a point where you say stop, and I'm shutting my brain off, and have that detox from your devices. And it's really important, I think, to keeping the human connection aspect of our lives intact.
There was, and somebody pointed out, I read that someplace, that it's make sure your devices work for you. You don't work for them.
Mm-hmm.
So
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And also talk to us a bit about, you mentioned earlier that how you kind of got your first, second, and third book created. Talk to us a bit. You said your second book, Elevate Your Eight. You mentioned you have the three tenets on that. Do you want to talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So it started out with this whole notion of like, what does work-life balance mean? And I started thinking about the whole sleep thing. And I think this started around the time I was living in Chicago, because I hosted a karaoke show in those days. And there were days of the week where I wasn't getting a full 8 hours of sleep. And I know how that felt the day after. And to be complete honest, in the spirit of full transparency, it wasn't always the sleep. Sometimes it was the alcohol. But it was karaoke, and it was at a gay bar. So what do you want from me? But I started realizing that I feel a lot better when I have 8 hours of sleep. And then I started doing research on this, and it was like, wow, there's a lot of issues that have to do with health that are directly connected to your sleep. So that came up for me. But the very last boss that I had at my very last housing position was one of those baby boomers, 60 hours a week, come in on the weekends to get caught up on my email because I'm in so many meetings. And there was definitely an expectation that his other senior level managers do that as well. And it was killing me. And there was a day in a senior management meeting where I just kind of, I meant to be a smartass about it, but my heart meant it. I'm going to be the first senior director at this institution who can do her job in 40 hours a week or less. And, I got called into the boss's office after that. And, well, that's not really very realistic, Kris. And if that's really the way that you feel, this probably isn't the best job for you. And, so just like that, I got counseled out of a position. But I thought, why is it not realistic? And why can I not be thinking about these things? So as I continue to talk through the thing of like, well, I'm at my best when I'm sleeping 8 hours a night. And if I'm leaving work after an 8-hour day, then it's like, okay, so what's the real key to time management? Well, let's do some math. There's 24 hours in every day. And regardless of how we feel about like, I don't have enough time to do this or that or the other thing. Well, that's a lot of crap, because you have the exact same 24 hours in every day that I have. So if I'm doing those two things with the work-life balance and the wellness, then I should be able to figure out how to do everything else I need to do in those 8 hours. And if I can't, it's okay. Nobody is going to die because I didn't get to pick up my dry cleaning today. And if you're a parent too, I think that this is something where the prioritization thing really has to get pumped up, because when you choose to have a family, you are choosing to not let go of necessarily, but be a lot more intentional about happy hour with your buddies and who you're going to play squash with. And, when you do your workout, and, you've got this fantastic routine of the 7-minute workout that you do and you get your steps in, and that probably means that you get to spend a whole lot more time with your kids. So it's about prioritizing. It's about knowing exactly how much time it takes you to do stuff. Because I think that's the other problem that people have. They think like, oh yeah, I get ready for my day in 30 minutes, but they're thinking tangibly about like, okay, I take my shower, eat my breakfast, I get in the car, but they're leaving out the things like I just laid in my bed for 30 minutes scrolling through my phone, and I left out the 20 minutes that, I watched Good Morning America while I was cooking my breakfast or after I ate my breakfast. And then before you know it, it's like, oh, I got to get in the car and get to the office. So there's things that we do almost automatically, we don't think about that suck time out of our day. And so as long as when we're intentional about that, and when we are prioritizing the things we want to get done and when we want to get them done, then hey, elevating your eight should really not be a problem.
Well, and I was talking to somebody talking about task management is time management, in the sense that
sure,
that if you there, and I can't remember, and you might have read this somewhere in place too, is talking about like there's no such thing as multitasking. You think you can multitask, but if any, and we talked about this at my day job as well, is that if somebody interrupts you while you're doing something, it takes you on average 15 minutes to get back into that zone you're in. So if you're constantly being interrupted all the time, then that's why it's taking so long to get something done.
Yeah.
Do you think, because you do mention, as you mentioned earlier about, your baby boomer boss, do you see challenges? Is it generational? Do you see the same issues with like millennials or Generation Zs, these newer generations of feeling tied to an office or feeling tied to a work? Or do you feel as though that's also issues of maybe a vestige of previous generations?
Yeah, I do actually think that there's a connection there. And it's funny because the minute that I started really reading about Gen X, which is my generation, I was like, oh my God, this is so me. Because when they first started talking about it in the mid 90s, it was when, people were talking about Nirvana and Pearl Jam and flannel shirts and Amazon and Starbucks coffee, and these things were just kind of finding their way into American popular culture. But I was like, no, Gen X, those are the slackers, and that's more like my baby sister. Those are her people. Those aren't my people. But then as you dig more into this from like an academic or scholarly research perspective, it's like, oh, that absolutely is me. Because Gen Xers value work-life balance. We were the latchkey kids. We spent a lot of time alone. Or just with our siblings in our house after school. So yeah, I think there's a piece of that. And when you consider too, like some of the defining events in our history, so you're 8 years younger than me, right? So do you put yourself as a later Gen Xer or like a really early millennial?
So according to the science, Gen Xers are from 1964 to 1980. So yeah, so I was born in 76, so I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So for us, a lot of people would say our defining, historical moments were like Reagan's the assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan and the Challenger explosion, right? And then when you look at what some of the younger people now, millennials, and then the Gen Y people, they had all these other things to reckon with. So they were dealing with Columbine. They were dealing with 9/11, a whole handful of things like that were so much more higher level, international catastrophes, if you will. I mean, not that the Challenger explosion wasn't a terrible thing, but so I think, I think it does contribute a little bit. And millennial folks and Gen Y people, they have never not known the internet pretty much. They've never not known MTV, cable television, the internet, the cell phone. We have a kid that swims with us. He's 23, but I asked him most questions about what he remembers from being a kid. And it's like, yeah, I mean, everybody in my house had a cell phone, and I had a cell phone before I was in junior high school. And that would have never happened for, folks like us. So when they didn't exist, but my dad would have never let me have a gadget like that. Kris, there's no reason for you to have that. It's not important to your, survival. But then again, like you, Barney, I'm sure your parents, my dad took me to college, unloaded my car, took me out to lunch, and then went back home. Yeah. And I figured all this stuff out by myself. Now you've got, move-in day, you've got student orientation, parents orientation, you have parent orientation weekend, you have family weekend, and there's all this, parental stuff that, over involvement with students and a lot of students who are, they're in management levels now, but they never really did a lot of stuff by themselves until they got out of college because they, mom and dad were there with them every step of the way. And that kind of stuff drives me crazy. I get really, I have very little patience with that kind of entitlement. And especially at a college campus where there are administrators that I know would love to just, hold a student's hand from start to finish. And it's like, we're not teaching them to be grownups that way. We're just telling them that that's okay. Someone will fix this for you. And you can't be 40 years old and still be afraid to call your bank to talk about your overdraft fee. Mom and dad aren't going to do that shit for you anymore. So come on, let's step it up.
I know. And it's funny because this slight tangent. It reminds me of the fact that and those parents are the Gen Xers who didn't have that. So it's I
know.
It's like, it reminds me of you're seeing these memes on Facebook. We're talking about, showing a pitch, it's like, kids, these days, like, I remember when I could ride in the back of a pickup and,
Right.
And they'd fine. And then my response to all those memes, like, yes, we did that as kids and we knew how dangerous it was. That's why we're not having our kids do that.
Exactly.
So because through that book, you were able to create a podcast as well called Elevate Your Rate as well.
Yep.
So we'll have a link to the show notes for that for people that want to listen to some really good career coaching advice. We'll link Kris McPeak's podcast to that along with their books. Tell us about how that started. And you did mention that you've had some pretty good guests on there as well.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, I wanted to tell the story of why it's important to honor your work-life balance and that you really can achieve time freedom through using the strategy this way. So originally it's like most podcasters, it's like, okay, let's get my friends together. You want to come be on my show. But I started reaching out and thinking about people that I learned from through this process, like who were authors that I admired, who were other podcasters that I learned from, and then just doing some outreach and saying, I would love for you to come on my show and talk about this. I before we hit record, I was talking about Sarah Knight, who is definitely my favorite author. She wrote The Life-Changing Magic of Not Giving a F. She wrote a book called Get Your Shit Together. She wrote another book called Calm the F Down. All of her stuff is laced with profanity, but her points are very well taken. It's really just about how you have to take ownership of your time, your energy, your money. And the best ways to do that are to honor those things and be realistic and be real with other people. And she goes about telling those, lessons in a way that's, full of curse words and, highly hilarious, but it's very tangible, real advice that makes sense. So having her on my show was an absolute, I was sweating the whole time because I was so antsy talking to her. I'm like, oh, I worship you. You're so amazing. I've been lucky to have a couple of big time authors on my show. It's just, trying to connect with other podcasters who are trying to do the same thing that I'm doing. And it's funny too, because we hold some of these folks up with so much, oh, that show was so highly rated and they're super famous, but they're probably not that much different than you or me. They have an idea and a story that they want to tell, and they use this platform to do it. And it's fun. And a lot of them, they still put their pants on one leg at a time, like they say. So, podcasting has been a lot of fun, and I'm meeting a lot of really cool people, and I feel really blessed to have this platform. And even the same with self-publishing, like writing a book. These days, some of the beauty of technology is that you no longer need permission to be able to tell your story or to put your idea out in the world. There's been so many technological advances that make it so easy to just do it. Like no one has to tell me I'm smart enough to write a book, because I know that I am, and I'm going to write the book, and I'm going to go to Amazon or BookBub or Kobo or whatever, and I'm going to put it out there. And I think that's really fun and really special. And there's a lot of self-published authors out there who are making a living with their writing because they've figured out the right way to do it and make it work, and have been really smart about, getting their story out there. So.
So we talked about, so I wanted to share also, so this is where your book is right here. It's on Amazon. You have, looking at that, some great reviews on there as well.
Thank you.
5-star reviews. And so people, please check it out. Kris McPeak, 9 to 5 Side Hustler, a guide to balancing your day job with your small business. And you also have on here as well. You also have talk to us about on your website here, KrisMcPeak.com. You do have some bundles. Do you want to talk to us about these bundles?
Yeah, actually, I have to take that one down. That one's not for sale anymore. I'm an affiliate with this group, the Ultimate Bundle, and in some of those, like the Ultimate Productivity Bundle that you're looking at right there, I was a contributor to that bundle. So this is an amazing group of people who have put together this pretty fantastic online company. I don't want to say aggressively, but they put it out there like, we're seeking contributors to these different topic areas, and, women's wellness, I contributed to that one as well. So they open up their window, so to speak, and you submit your piece, if it's an online course or an ebook or a printable, a planner, something like that. You send that off to them. If they like it, they'll contact you. They'll let you know, like, you're being selected for this bundle. And then it's up to us as the affiliates to get the word out there, and we get, a chunk of what we sell. And I think that this concept, the people behind it, the Ultimate Bundles they're really great people. They're highly motivated. They're doing a pretty amazing job of, the whole online marketing, online e-commerce, that kind of stuff. So I'm really happy to promote the bundles all the time, even if I don't have an item in it. That healthy meal planning one that just ended last week, I bought that myself because I'm like, I need to get my paws on this, because there's some really cool stuff in there. Meal planning is something I struggle with. I'm not very good at it. But yeah, so I always market these guys on my site, whether I'm a contributor or not, because I believe in the product. They curate some really amazing content, and it's some fun stuff.
So we have some people that listen and watch and listen to this who are also aspiring authors.
Yeah.
So one of the parts we like to do is talk to people who have published work. So what are some of the tips that you wish somebody like you would have told you, say, 5 years ago?
I think first of all is to not, that whole concept of permission again, like, just if you feel like you have a book in you, then just start creating the time that you need to put it out there. So for me, that turned into, how am I leveraging those other 8 hours of time to make sure that I can, put the energy and the effort into this. So I write during my lunch hour. I physically remove myself from my office space. Where I work, we have a really nice break room that has sofas and tables and the whole thing. I pull my food in there, and I'll, crank up the laptop and start writing. I try to put a focus every day on how many words I want to get done. In the beginning, when I was first writing, it was like, okay, I'll feel really good if I can get 500 words done. Set a goal for yourself, try to make that happen. And then as I got a little bit more comfortable with the writing process, I could boost that up to 1,000 words, then 1,500 words. And I think, like, when you have your outline set and you really know kind of how you want to package everything, carving the time is not difficult. For me, it's not anyway. And I'm definitely a morning person. So writing in the morning, like when I first get up before I head to the pool, is something that works for me. But there's a lot of other writers out there who need to write at night because they have kids and they need to wait till the family's, quieted down for the night. So telling yourself, I'm going to write this book, telling yourself I'm going to make the time for it, and then giving yourself an end date. And this book group that I was in these past 14 weeks, it was really great to have the accountability of that, because posting on Facebook that says, I'm writing a book, I'm going to publish it on this date. For me, that was August 4th. And now it's out there, and now people know that I'm doing it. So for some folks, it's really scary. It's scary to say, I'm going to write a book and this is the day that it's going to come out, because now that you've put it out there, it's real and you've said it. And there may only be two people that are going to hold you to that, but there's still two people that are going to be asking, like, when's your book coming out? I'm really excited for you. So, the whole priority thing just it rises to the top on this kind of stuff every time, because if you set the priority and make the time and make it consistent, then you're golden, and you'll be able to finish that project, that book, that podcast concept, all of it. It's all totally doable. So for folks out there that I really want to write a book, but I don't know that I have the time to do it. Well, you have the same amount of time as I do, and I work a full-time job and have 2 side hustles. And you just tell yourself, like, I'm going to do this, and make the time, and you'll be fine. You'll be absolutely fine.
So where do you find, because all of your books have some really great, nuggets of information on there. What do you do? How do you, because inspiration isn't planned. What do you do when you are at work or someplace or swimming or something, and all of a sudden something pops in? how do you access, where do you have like a notebook next to you? How do you were able to capture any errant ideas that pop into your head?
Yeah, when I'm in the pool, I just take my waterproof Sharpie and I just, write that on my arm. And then Coach Husband says, "Get your head back in the gear." No, I I do a couple things, and these are ideas that I got from other authors. So I'm a big fan of James Altucher, and he has this concept like just give yourself 10 ideas a day. Every day, write down 10 ideas. They could be 10 ideas for new businesses I want to run, 10 ideas for books I want to write, 10 people I want to invite to be on my podcast, 10 ways that Barney Smith makes me laugh. And so he uses those little waiter pads to write his down, but I have a journal that I use for that. And the journal I'm using now has the words "done is better than perfect" on the front of it. So I don't use that every day. I try to, but I keep that's with me all the time. That's in my backpack for work. I will take it with me to the beach when we do open water clinics on the weekends. So if I get inspired by something, I write that down. So that's one trick that I learned from James Altucher. And then the other thing that I do is I have a planner. It's the 7-Minute Life Planner. It's by Allison Lewis, and I met her recently. She's a childhood friend of my supervisor, and we were very lucky to do her 7-week time management masterclass where we learned very specifically how to use this planner. So there's a section in there where you sort of keep track of the things that are, kind of coming top of mind as you go through the day. So that thing is open on my desk all 8 hours I'm at the day job, and then it's on my bedside table. So if there's something that inspires me either first thing in the morning or before I go to bed, and I kind of plan my day around that too. 7 minutes in the morning to kind of cycle through what I want to do for the day, and then 7 minutes at night to be able to look at my planner, look at myself and say, did I accomplish what I said I was going to do today? And I love being able to check that box that says, well, yes, I did. And look how amazing I am. So, and I think we all find that way. Some of us might have an app on our phone that we really like. I hear Evernote getting kicked around nonstop for ideas like that. And Scrivener is the software that I use to do my writing. And Scrivener has a phone app too. So if you're one of those people that's just super tied into technology, some things I still just like to put pen to paper, and things like ideas and journaling fall into that category. So I love my 7-minute planner, and I love my little, 10 ideas a day journal books. Those are helpful for me.
So when you wrote your first book, Making Work for You, so like I said, we have, authors that might be listening, or, aspiring authors. They would be like, "Hey, Kris, this is great advice. How do I actually make the book?" What was that process? Because you're self-published. How did you do
that? Yeah, it's pretty easy. If you go to Amazon and you just type in "write my book," there you'll find probably 100,000 different little primers on how to write a book on Amazon. But and you can use, obviously Scrivener is what I chose to use to write my book, but some people use Google Docs, some people just use Word. You create an account with what's called Kindle Direct Publishing, so kdp.com. You sign up there, you create your account. There's all kinds of tips and tutorials and things that they instruct you, how to format your book. This is what we need it to look like to upload it. You have to upload an EPUB or a Mobi file. And you can find a lot of free online conversion tools that will do that for you. You can take a Word doc and convert it to an EPUB. You upload your EPUB. You write your book description. You choose your categories. And then when you're ready to submit, you hit submit. And this book group that I was in these last 14 weeks, we went through some very specific strategic things on choosing the categories, ways to sort of, play with the algorithm to get your book into best-selling status. My newest book never got that flag, the bestseller flag, but for about 36 hours, I was #1 in 7 categories. And for me, I'll take it. That was really exciting to be able to say that. But yeah, self-publishing is not hard. And there's a million different resources out there help you. I would definitely recommend Laura Peterson's class, her course. She has an online course, and I can't remember the name of it. I'll give it to you if you want to put it in the show notes. But, if you don't want to spend $750, $1,000 on an online course, you can buy a 99-cent book on Amazon and pretty much get some of the same information. Just sort of depends on what your trajectory is. Like if you've got that book in you right now, you just don't know how to publish it, then the 99-cent book will be fine. If you think like, well, I know I want to write a book. I have an idea, but I don't know where to start. Then maybe, spend a few more bucks and enroll in a course that's going to kind of help you talk through what that, Laura uses this veggie burger methodology because she's vegan. So, you start with the bottom bun, and that's your book outline. And then you add your patty, and, those are your chapters. And then your editing is the lettuce and tomato. And then you put your top bun back. And but at that point, I'd written 2 books. So I knew how to write a book. I just didn't know how to play with KDP, how to choose my category so that I could get some good traction on the day of my book launch and get that, get those bestseller, those number ones next to my book and screenshot that for further posterity.
And what about like the actual design itself? How did you get the cover design? Is that through there as well, or?
They have a cover creator that you can use, and you upload your own art. I used Canva for my first 2 books, and I designed my book cover on Canva. And then for book number 3, I went through something called 99 Designs, and there's different packages you can pay for, but it's basically a design contest. So you upload, you write down the outline of your book, you sort of write down the kind of look that you're hoping to get, and they'll have you select, they'll give you like 20 book covers, and you indicate which ones feel like your style. Talk about colors you like, you talk about the kind of persona you're putting through. So, I mean, really, if you look at my cover, and if you're someone who knows me and you look at my cover, you're like, oh, that's totally Kris McPeak, no doubt. And that's why she wound up winning the contest, because I really, I look at that picture and I'm like, boy, she nailed it, except that I need to get my hair cut a little bit more on the side. But I mean, my first 2 covers are fine. That was what you do when you have very little money to play with. And there's some very nice Canva designs out there for book covers. But this was well worth the $200 that I spent to have a professionally designed cover for the book. And I think it's really beautiful. I'm very happy that it turned out that way.
So what are you looking at as well as, so this, obviously this book just came out less than a month ago. Are you already working on a 4th?
I have a lot of ideas of things I want to write about. I'm very interested right now in what other college students are doing, given that there's so many institutions that have gone to remote learning, online learning, and for some students, especially these days, because there's so much distraction, there are a lot of students that don't do well in the online learning environment. So I've thought a lot about writing a book on the gap year. So for a student who takes a gap year away from school, like what are ways that you can stay engaged, like mentally for your academic pursuit? What are ways that you can, especially since right now too, a lot of students will take a gap year because they want to go travel. My nieces did the Appalachian Trail for 18 months after they graduated from high school. They still haven't gone to college, but that's neither here nor there. But not, you can't go backpacking to Europe right now. The borders are closed. So for some students, this idea that like, well, now I'm still stuck at home. I can't find a job because there's not a lot of jobs. And I want to, do something to keep myself mentally and academically engaged so that I don't go crazy. And I think that is a need right now. So I've been thinking about kicking that kind of thing around. Like, here's 100 ways to stay engaged in your gap year until you can go back to school. But then I'm also really encouraged by the notion of how we continue to build community during the pandemic. The concept of community is really important. And I think when we are facing the kinds of challenges that we're facing right now, where it's hard to be with people, than really positive stories of community and how people are staying connected during this time without backsliding. Because especially if you're somebody that is introverted to begin with, it can be really easy to sort of feel really happy, like, oh, I'm working from home and, you know, I'm in my element here, but even just, you know, connecting on Zoom a couple hours a day with colleagues, it might not be enough. So those are a couple ideas that I'm kind of playing with right now. And I haven't decided which way I want to go, but it was so intense writing this book. And I put a lot of pressure on myself to, you know, make it work and make it successful, that I'm definitely taking September off. I'm not going to write anything else until October, but that'll give me enough time to decide, like, okay, you know, which direction do I want to go? And then I'll start in October. And then I want to participate in NaNoWriMo this year, National Novel Writing Month. I started to do that what year? In 2017. And I got about 20,000 words in to my first novel, a horror novel. And I did not finish, but I think I would like to finish it this year. So I may do that. I will do that in November, whether or not I finish, but I am going to participate. So we'll see where that goes. The idea of writing fiction is really petrifying, but, you know, why not, right?
And would you, so, because as you mentioned before, your first two books, you weren't part of that book club. For your next books, did you find value in that, and would you actually get that social pressure of being a part of that book club again?
I think I would probably want to be very intentional and seek out other people that are looking to do another book and maybe do something smaller. The group was great, but it was very big. It was 27 people. You know, hashtag 27 bestsellers. And I enjoyed that. And I enjoyed meeting new people. But then there's a lot of comparison. That's really nobody's fault. It happens. And that was very stressful for me, especially at the end. So while I'm glad I had the experience, I probably wouldn't duplicate it, and not at that size. I would probably want to be like, I'll work with 4 other writers who are looking to write a book around the same time I am, and connect with those people and say, hey, let's, you know, our agreement is to finish a book by the end of the quarter or by the end of the year. And let's just, you know, let's meet a couple times a month and see how we're doing. Because having that accountability is really important. And that definitely kept me going. And it was easier to not say, like, okay, well, this, I don't want to do it anymore, when I had people that were relying on me to keep them motivated too.
So talk to us, like you mentioned earlier, a couple names. So who would you say is like your favorite authors? Maybe not necessarily like in the coaching one, but just other genres itself. Do you have for those are your go-to books you have on your nightstand that you would always pick up and read?
Fiction or nonfiction, or does it matter?
Both. Either. Yeah.
I was very late to the Stephen King game, and I started, and I read a lot of, I do a lot of Audible books because I commute in the car. And so, yeah, I came late to the Stephen King game, but I've been enjoying a lot of his more recent things and some of the older stuff. I started the Mr. Mercedes series. It's been pretty cool. And what else did I just recently read that I really, really liked? And then Anita Shreve was one of my favorite authors back in the 90s. And I recently reread her book Testimony that I really liked. She's more of the, I don't know, not like historical fiction, but sort of like not chick lit, but about 2 categories up from chick lit. She writes very, very female-driven storylines, so I like her stuff. I don't know, I'm drawing a blank. I'm listening to a lot of true crime stuff lately, too. The Story of the West Memphis 3, I've been listening to Devil's Knot, and a couple books about the whole John Wayne Gacy thing that happened in Chicago.
Is this some of this, too, also inspiration for your horror book that you're working on?
No, I have a very set direction with the horror book. It's sort of, can't believe I'm going to say this live in front of people. It's sort of the idea of Big meets Dexter, if you will.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a lawyer who has this very traumatic thing happen to him as a child, and he suddenly starts being, like wrong place at the wrong time for these these convicted serial killers and rapists that he's prosecuting, and they're dying in freakishly weird ways that he just happens to be connected to. I'm not going to say anything else. I don't know.
In a way, he kind of gave it away if he said Big meets Dexter. So
right. I don't know. We'll see. I haven't decided where it's all going.
That sounds like a fun book. Yeah.
Only 2 killings so far. So,
okay.
But I haven't been back in it in a really long time. So I might get to it and start rereading it and go, oh, this is crap. Why did I even want to write this in the first place? But it's fun. It's fun trying to, put yourself in that place of completely creating a universe, a situation, a character from scratch. And then I think about people like that guy that wrote Game of Thrones. Like, how in the world did you create this whole universe from scratch with the level of detail that is there? And I didn't even read those books. I just watched the TV show. And I'm sure that didn't even come close to, really getting into the detail of it all. Right.
And so we're nearing the end of our time. So it's been quick. But you mentioned as your book came out August 4th. People can see it. People can absolutely check it out on Amazon.
Yeah.
Your other books are on there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And also your KrisMcPeak.com. They can see your podcast reviews, your ultimate bundles. But you also, looks like you do also have a coaching thing as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right now it's really fun working with people that are in that stuck place where they were furloughed or they got laid off because of COVID. So they're trying to think how do I start reinventing myself, because I need to go back to work and I'm not sure where to start. And so I've been enjoying having those conversations with people, because I think people get in this, they get in the rut, like I can only do one thing. And I experienced that when I was trying to get out of housing, how do I market myself outside of housing? Because that's all I know how to do. And when I started really thinking about it, and I'm like, no, that's not all I know how to do. And I have all these skills that are completely translatable. So it's very easy to do that. Some people just need a little extra push. And the support to make that transition. And those are the types of clients that I want to work with. So if that's of interest to any of your listeners, for sure, would love to hear from them.
Yeah, absolutely. And where can they find you? At KrisMcPeak.com. Do you have a Twitter handle or anything like that? Or
yeah, so my Instagram and Twitter are Christmas Peak. So KrisMaspeak. So if you say my name really fast, that's what comes out. And that's where that all came from. So yeah, Christmas Peak.
So people be able to check you out on Twitter. You're also on Instagram.
Yep, I'm on the gram. I have a Facebook group called Elevate Your 8. They can come find me there. And I just have a regular standard, Kris McPeak Facebook page. Okay. I think I'm probably one of the only Kris McPeaks on Facebook, so it should not be hard to find me at all.
Yeah, good. Well, thank you very much, Kris. This has been great. It was nice chatting with you again. And please make sure when you produce your horror book or your next book, come back on again. I'll be excited to talk to you.
Yeah, I would love to come back. This has been a lot of fun. Probably like one of the most fun interviews I've done ever in the history of my life. It's been really awesome.
I'm just writing down those times when you swear so I can bleep it in the YouTube video.
Oh, I'm sorry. I should have asked you if it was okay. Barney knows me, of course. Why would he invite me to be on his show if he wasn't open to a swear word? I swear a lot more than I did when I was the coordinator of housing and residential life. I don't know why.
Yeah, you see, yeah. It's just you have You're still a really good role model, obviously. So you
Thanks.
best selling
So
all these books here. I tell you, this is great. So you mentioned earlier too. Okay, now this part we'll edit out. This is fine. This
so hilarious. It still says live, 47 minutes.